Greetings friends and welcome to the climbing tutorial. This is kind of like a Breath of the Wild, Genshin Impact, Spider-Man wall crawling sort of style of climbing tutorial. What you can do in this one is go from one surface and sort of stick to another. Yoo-hoo! If there's multiple objects. You can climb on any side of it. You can drop down with circle. You can of course jump around with X from one object to another. And even if the object is not flat, if it's got like a bit of a curve to it, that doesn't matter. We can climb that as well, friends. Yoo-hoo! So yes, friends, this is what we're going to do in today's video. We're going to do a little bit of climbing, a little bit of wall crawling, and I hope you found it useful, friends. Let's see what's next. Woo-woo! Okay friends, so we're going to begin with your particular puppet. Here I've just got a blank basic puppet, and as you can see there's nothing here that we've added. And then we're going to have the object that we want to be able to climb. So this is our climbable object. So the first thing we're going to do, friends, is we're going to set aside a label, and the label is going to be the one that we sort of dedicate to climbable objects. So you can make it anything. I'm going to make it scenery. So for future reference, any sculpture of any shape or size, if it is scenery, it's going to be able to be climbable. But now, how do we actually go about doing that? So I'm just going to expand the size of our microchip a little bit over here. Alrighty, I'll get rid of that grid snap. So I'm going to go to gadgets now, and the first thing we need to be able to do is detect the climbable surface. So I'm going to go sensors and input, and then I'm going to go and get a laser scope. Now in this laser scope, I'm going to make it so that the position of the gizmo, or the white part here, is in the right spot. So what we want to do is, we're going to go and put it sort of towards our characters, fairly central. You might want to sort of start again, but use a grid snap. So, I got rid of it a little bit too quickly. Okay, sweet. So, I'm just going to move it so it's kind of by the stomach sort of an area, and then I'm going to make the arrow point forwards. Oh, sorry, actually, what you have to do to rotate this is, you have to grab the ball with R2 and then use L2 to sort of rotate it around. Cool. So now the laser is pointing forwards. That is cool. Sweet. So now what we're going to do is actually reduce the range of this laser, because we don't want to be able to climb on a surface if we're like 1 meter away from it. We want to be pretty close to it. So let's make it something like 0.5. If we're 0.5 meters away, then we can start climbing it. Okay, sweet. So what happens when we climb it? Well, we're going to need some logic for that. So we're going to go logic and processing and get ourselves a microchip. And now this microchip is going to be powered by this laser scope. But of course, the laser is only going to detect the scenery label, so we can uncheck all of the other labels. So when it hits something, and of course it can only hit scenery objects or things with the scenery label, it will activate our microchip, and this will be all our climbing logic. Climbing logic. Perfect. So the first thing we're going to want to do, friends, is put down a little I'll just turn off the grid snap. Put down a little keyframe in animate, and what I'm going to do is go into my character and I'm going to deactivate procedural movement. So I'm going to go into the puppet with L1 and square, behavior, and deactivate all the procedural animations. And now not only that, friends, but I'm also going to go into this and actually deactivate the puppet interface in its entirety, just so that it sort of stays nice and simple. So when it detects the wall, all the sort of background stuff goes off. So I'm just going to say no proc for no procedural stuff. So that's kind of like auto-generated animations and all those sorts of things. So that's all going to stop. Another thing that's going to happen is we're going to sort of stop in place. So physically, when we sort of attach to a surface, we want to actually kind of freeze where we are and not sort of fall or walk through it or all those sorts of things. So what we're going to be able to do in order to like stick to the wall is go move as an output and get us an advanced move. It's the sort of cube with lots of arrows. So what we're going to do is go movement strength 100%, dampen X, Y, and Z are going to be 100%, and then for now we're going to set all of these values to 0. So in other words, movement in the x-axis, in other words left and right, movement in the y-axis, in other words up and down, and movement in the z-axis is all going to be dampened. In other words, we're not going to be able to move on any of those axes. In other words, we're going to be stuck in place. So now, if I go towards this chap, ching, I'm now sort of, sort of stuck in place. Of course, the character was moving a bit weirdly because I actually need to activate this keyframe. By default, when you pop a keyframe into a microchip, it's not actually activated, so you have to activate it as well with L1 and square. So let me do that again. If, for example, I were to delete this connection, you would see I have a keyframe here, and when you add in any sort of keyframe, the first time you add it and you do whatever, it starts deactivated. So you must actually activate it. And then we can create that connection there again. Just a bit of a fun fact. Okay, sweet. So let me make this a little bit bigger also. So I'm just going to go cha-cha-chang-chang. So now when I climb onto my climbable surface, I'm going to be stuck. Cha. So now I can't move on the X, Y, or Z axis. So we've got the sticking part right, and that looks pretty cool. But we want to be able to not only adhere to the wall, stick to it, but also move around on it. So what we're going to do for that, friends, is make it so that we can use our analog to move on the X, in other words the left and right axis, and on the Y axis, in other words up and down. And that'll allow us like a full sort of circular range of motion. We're not going to move on the Z axis because that would be moving forwards and backwards, in other words away from and towards the wall. We don't want to move on the Z axis. But that's cool because we've got a means to do that with our analog. So what we're going to do is, in order to get that to work, is we're going to put down we're going to go logic and processing and get ourselves a splitter. Then we're going to go to our controller sensor. And this is very important, friends. We're going to go to page 3 and get left stick local. On page 2, there's a left stick, but that's not going to work because we basically just want to make it, because this is a 3D world and that sort of a thing, we want to make it so that it works with our character wherever they are facing and wherever left and right, or X and, left and right and up and down are in relation to them, not in relation to the whole scene. So we're going to go left stick local. We're also going to go into our advanced mover, and we're going to go local space. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make it so we've got X is looking good because it's pointing to the left, and of course X is our left and right movement. But at the moment Y is pointing backwards, and we actually want Y to be pointing upwards. So X is left and right, Y is up and down. So we've made it local space because we want to be able to jump not only on this wall but also on this wall. If you were doing a 2D game, for example, and climbable walls were always on one surface, you wouldn't have to worry about local space. But because this is a 3D game, the X and Y values will be different depending on where your character is and where they're facing. Because if X and Y is always here and here, what happens if you're on this surface? You're going to be moving in all sorts of weird directions. So we want to have local space there. One of the things that happens when you go with local space and the local stick is that the values get inverted. In other words, when you move left, your character, or when you move left on your analog, your character moves right. When you move up on the analog, your character moves down. So what we're going to do for that is, when we increase the values of our X and Y, in other words, our left, right, and up and down movement, we're actually going to make it negative values. So for example, look, I'll make these positive values first, and then I'll connect X of the analog and Y like so. But when I jump onto here, if I move left, I'm with the left analog, I'm actually moving right. And if I move down, I'm going to move up. If I move right, I move left, and all those sorts of things. So as you can see, when you do things locally, it actually inverts it. So we're going to delete these connections quickly. And now we're going to make it so that instead of being positive values, they're negative values. So those inverted values actually get inverted once again. And of course, a negative times a negative is a positive. So here we have it, and we've got, yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily negative and a negative being a positive, but it's kind of just like, it just inverts the values. So I didn't actually connect the Y's there. So we connect X to X, we connect Y to Y. Yeah. Woohoo! Because actually the way it works is that it seems like it's inverted for us, but it actually makes sense. Because when you move your analog to the right, the sort of base part of the analog is actually moving to the right. But anyway, that's, that's a little bit too fancy. Basically just use the negative values in order for it to invert to the right way. So now up is up, left is left, right is right, and down is down. Sweet. Yeah. And now, friends, that's looking pretty sweet. But something that we might want to do is, actually give our character a bit of a pose. So that they don't kind of just hang around there sort of T-posing it up. But, I mean, not that they were. But anyway, we don't want a sort of basic looking character. We want one to look pretty legit. So we're going to put on the puppet mirror. Then we're going to put on like a bit of like an arm thing over here. That looks pretty cool. Get the legs to sort of be in a bit of a climbing position. Yeah, and friends, what you're going to want to do is kind of make it so that the feet and the hands are like sort of in line if you look at it from the side. Because of course if your feet are too far forward and you're climbing here, then it's going to look like your feet sort of clip through the wall, as it were. So you want to kind of make it so that they're fairly on the same line. Okay, sweet. So this will be our climbing pose. So I'm just going to call that pose. That's looking fabulous. And of course, it's a new keyframe, so we have to activate it. I jump, and I'm now in my pose, and I can move in all the various directions. That's looking pretty cool. Now, what I want to do is make it so that I actually have a animation. So when I move around, my character moves around in relation to, the fact that I'm moving. So I'm going to put down a timeline. And in this timeline, I'm actually going to copy the pose. I will shorten this timeline so it's quite short. So now this timeline is quite short. I'm going to go to my pose. I'm going to make it so that one arm, I'll deactivate the puppet mirror. One arm is up, and the other one is a little bit down. One leg is up, and the other one is a little bit down. And I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to do the exact opposite. So one arm, the other arm is up, the other arm is down, and alternate as well for the old legs too. And then you copy the original keyframe and put it at the end. X and X to blend them, and then you go to the timeline and you say playback mode loop, so that when it plays, we've got a nice little sort of climbing loop going on there. Yeehaw! That looks pretty cool, hey friends? So now we're going to make it so that when the left stick local is detected, it is going to activate this timeline. So we run, we jump, we stick. If we move, our character does a little bit of an animation. Yeah! They do a little bit of a climbing animation. They are a little bit far off. If you think your character is a little bit far off, no worries. All you have to do is reduce the distance of the laser scope, so that you have to be close in order for it to detect. Yeehaw! And all those sorts of things. You can go closer and closer, and all these bits and bobs, whatever it might be. It's sort of adjusted as you see fit. And that's looking pretty cool. But now, friends, we want to also add in the ability to drop from our sort of surface. So if we press the circle button, we want to be able to fall. Because, for example, at the moment, if I'm on the floor and I'm like, cool, I'm in my climbing pose, but I can't actually get back down on the floor. Help me, help me. So what we're going to do for that is, we're going to go with circle, the circle button. So we're going to delete the original connection, which is depossess puppet. I'm going to put down a new little keyframe. And this keyframe is actually going to deactivate the laser scope. So when I press circle, it's going to deactivate the laser scope. And I'm going to just say deactivate laser. So when it deactivates laser, our character is just going to fall and go back to normal. So here we are. If I press circle, whoa. Cool. You can also, because it's connected directly to the keyframe, it's only going to work for as long as you press it. So if I just tap it, I can sort of drop a little bit of a ways and then sort of hold on again. So there we have the ability to drop down. And we also, friends, want to be able to jump up. Okay, friends, so when we want to jump, so for example, just to get off the object or from, one climbable object to another, we're going to use a force applier. I actually got this strat from my boy Vince Cully. Definitely check out his wall jump tutorial. I'll add a link in the description below. Okay, sweet. So we're going to get ourselves a force applier, go move as an output and get ourselves a little force applier. And we're going to go 100%, 5.5 is pretty good. Force type, we're going to say directional. Put on a grid snap and make it so that the arrow points upwards. So, when we press X, the old force is shooting us upwards, not just kind of in a 360 burst. So that's pretty cool, and it's going to affect the friends label. So we'll uncheck all the others, and we'll go to our character and we'll make sure that their label is friend. Perfection. So when we press X, we will have a bit of a jump. So now if I get to our wall and we press X, yeehaw! We're going to jump and all that sort of business. Now, one problem is that when we jump and we're stuck to the wall, if we press X, we'll eventually get off it, but in the meantime, our sort of animation, our pose is still going to be stuck there. So we're actually going to make it so that when we press X, it's also going to deactivate the laser and all the various animations and so on and so forth. So I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to here, yeah. So what's cool about this is you can jump certain amounts. It's basically like the drop logic, but completely in reverse. So we get to the surface, we jump, we jump. Sweet. Alrighty, friends, so now we can get to a surface, we can climb it, we can jump it, we can jump atop it. At the moment, if I just hold X, it's going to just sort of, I'm going to permanently go off into the distance. So if you want to make it so that the jump is just like a bit of a short one, what you can do is just add in a bit of a timeline, put on your force applier there and make it so that it's like the force applier will only be in effect for, just a very short time. And when you press X, it'll activate the timeline. So this way you can't just sort of hold X to permanently fly upwards. This will just give you like a bit of a short burst. Yeah. Yeah. But even if the jump doesn't get you all the way to the top, you can keep holding X and you won't actually reattach to the wall. Just like if you press circle. So if I press circle, I can let go. If I'm attached, I can jump off. Alrighty, friends, so that's looking pretty cool, but we do have a little bit of a snag. If I jump onto my surface at a bit of an angle, I'm going to have like this weird sort of clipping through the wall situation, which is not fun. So what we want to do next is line up our character with the surface that they are climbing. And I actually learned this from, I had to ask my boy Tap how to do this. Tap Giles, that is. Because when I did it the first time, it wasn't working quite right. So I was like, homies, please help. And Tap came to the rescue. And what he showed me was something that I tried myself but couldn't quite get to work. But what we're going to do is we're going to use our laser scope that we've got over here, and we're going to use a look at rotator. So here we are. We're going to put down, going to move as an output, and then get ourselves a look at rotator. It's the one with the little eyeball. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go look at rotator. We're going to go 100%, 100%. That's strength and damping. And then we're going to go make look at rotator about like 300. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to the outputs page of our look at rotator. I'm going to put that to the side. Then we're going to go to our laser scope. This is the original one that we have that detects our particular surface. And we're going to go to the outputs over here. Now we're going to go to hit surface orientation. Now what hit surface orientation means is it takes into the account the angle that our laser is hitting the object in question. And then it will compensate for that in the look at rotator. So for example, if it sees that, ooh, we're shooting the angle at a bit of a 30-degree angle, if we're shooting the laser at a 30-degree angle, then it'll compensate for that and align us correctly. So the way that we connect these things is we go hit surface orientation and we connect it to scene space direction. Then what we're going to do is point the arrow backwards, and this is where I needed Tap's help because I was pointing the arrow forwards. But actually, basically, what you're doing is you're showing the look at rotator or this particular surface. You want your back to be facing away from it. If you point it forwards, your character is going to sort of turn around instead. So what we're doing is we're making the look at rotator's arrow point backwards. The laser scope is of course still pointing forwards. So now what is going to happen is the hit surface orientation is connected to the scene space direction of our look at rotator. There's no tags involved, anything like that. But now, if I jump at a bit of an angle, yeah, as you can see, our character lines up perfectly according to the surface that they're climbing on. And what's cool about this, friends, is we can now climb on funky surfaces. Spider-Man. So I love this, friends, because now we can climb on all sorts of surfaces, friends. And literally all you need is for the sculpt in particular to be to have that particular label, which is the scenery label. So now that we've fixed this up, friends, and we have our character aligning with the surface that they're climbing on, we can do some awesome stuff. So we've got a climbable object here, friends, but I'm going to go ahead and make a completely brand new sculpt. I'm going to do a cylinder. We'll make it so that our character is climbing, you know, a bit of a tower, that sort of a thing. So we'll make a bit of a tower, make this a little bit bigger. That's looking pretty cool. And then cha-cha-chang. And now, of course, this is like literally just a fresh sculpt. There's, you know, I've just made it. And if I jump on it, nothing's going to happen, sadness. But now, if I go to it and I make it scenery, because of all the logic I've put in my puppet, that's all I need to do to make this brand new sculpt a climbable object. So now if I go up to it, yeah, my character can now climb up this like cylinder over here. Yee! So now, yeah, so there we are, friends. Literally a brand new sculpt that I've added right now, and it has become a climbable object. You can create, you know, you can make like little copies and all sorts of things. You can create yourself like a little climbing course, whatever it might be. And all you need, friends, is the particular sculpt to have the correct label. And just like that, we can be jumping from one object to the next, yeah, and having a great time, friends. Cha-ching, yeah. And friends, that's pretty much all there is to it. So, okay, let's do it once again in summary, so we can see all the things that we've done. So we have a laser scope that detects our particular this is very important. It detects the label, which is our scenery label. You can, of course, make it any label. It must just be consistent. So if your objects are, you know, if the climbable objects, you want to make it objects or you want to make it machine, whatever, it can be anything. It must just be the thing that is detected by this laser scope. The laser scope, we have a bit of a short range so that we're quite close to the surface, but you can make it anything really. And of course it detects that particular label. Then it's going to power our climbing logic. The climbing logic contains an advanced mover that dampens in the X, Y, and Z axis, and it has negative movement to correlate for the local space movement. So we have our left stick local over here, and we connect it to the X and Y values, which are of course negative values to offset that inversion. And we can then move up and down and left and right when we attach to a wall. And if no values are being input, our character will be stuck in place. You know, they're kind of sticking to a wall. We have a keyframe over here, which disables procedural animation and the puppet interface. We have our pose keyframe over here, which puts our character into a nice little pose. We have our timeline, which is activated whenever we use our left stick local, whenever that input is detected. And it's just a looping timeline, woohoo, of a very simple animation. In order to get our character to align perfectly with whichever surface they're facing, whether that's round or curved or whatever it might be, we have the laser scope's hit surface orientation, which is on the outputs page, the sort of circular one with an arrow through, and we connect that directly to a look at rotator pointing backwards that is connected to the scene space direction. This allows us to, of course, face any particular object that we are climbing and sort of align with it. Not only that, but we can also jump out of, I'll just rename this timeline to jump. We can also jump from any object in particular that is climbable, and we can also drop from it by using the deactivate laser. All of these use deactivate laser, and we've just got a little bit of a jump there. So there you are, friends, and you can really make any sort of sculpture and you know, a climbable object just by using this simple logic. I want to say a big thank you to my boys Vince, Cully and Tap Giles for their help in this particular video. You must definitely subscribe to them if you haven't already and check out their awesome videos. As I said, Vince has an awesome one with like wall jumping, and Tap Giles has an awesome one on actually like a climbing like ledge system. So mine's kind of a bit Zelda style, but his is like a little bit more like Uncharted ledge grabbing and ledge climbing. So definitely check out those videos. The links will be in the description below. But yes, friends, thank you so much for checking out this video, and I hope you have many awesome climbing adventures soon. I saw in the one poll that we did that people are very interested in adventure games, and so this is my first sort of adventure game tutorial, and I hope you guys found it useful. Thank you so much, friends. I shall catch you on the flip-flop. Peace out.